In 2036, a civil war broke out in Ukraine, where a resistance movement clashed with Russian insurgents. To contain the threat, the US Army sent peacekeeping forces, along with robotic soldiers sent by the UN, known as GUMPs. On yet another night of battle, a group of 40 US Marines finds itself surrounded by Russian snipers armed with a missile launcher. As the battle intensifies, Lieutenant Thomas Harp monitors everything from the command center through the cameras of a drone ship. With the soldiers' lives at risk, Harp requests authorization to launch a missile and destroy the launcher before it's too late. The request is denied, but the lieutenant disobeys a direct order and fires the missile, destroying the launcher and saving the 38 soldiers, including Sergeant Miller. However, 2 of the soldiers were eliminated in the explosion, and after the confrontation, the lieutenant is called in to explain himself to his superiors. Harp tries to explain, but as punishment, he is removed from remote combat and transferred to a field battalion in Ukraine, led by Colonel Eckhart. Days later, the lieutenant arrives at the new base, which is monitored by soldiers and GUMPs. After passing through identification, Harp is introduced to Colonel Eckhart, who says he is already aware of the missile incident. He warns the lieutenant that he will not tolerate insubordination at his base and sends him to find Captain Leo to receive his new mission. The lieutenant then proceeds to an isolated area of the base, and upon entering, he finds himself in a room filled with paper files and old machines. Finally, the lieutenant finds Captain Leo, and without much introduction, he summons him for his first field mission. The two are to deliver medication to a group of survivors in the conflict zone, as well as obtain information about a Russian criminal named Viktor Koval. According to his informant, Koval is a supplier of nuclear weapons who is seeking access to missile silos created during the Cold War. Although many believed these silos were deactivated, Viktor intends to recover them and thus have an unimaginable source of nuclear power. If he achieves his goal, the nations of the world will become easy targets for the criminal, who has interests greater than the war between Russia and Ukraine. Upon discovering what he is getting himself into, Harp warns that he has no experience with combat in the field, but the captain tells him that this will not be necessary. The two then go to the locker room to collect their equipment, when suddenly Leo takes off his shirt and reveals his true identity. The captain is, in fact, a high-tech android, created as a super soldier for the US Army. Harp doesn't believe this is possible, but Leo assures him that it's real, and that only he and Colonel Eckhart know his true condition. For this reason, the captain demands the lieutenant's trust and discretion, otherwise the entire operation will be at risk. The lieutenant accepts the conditions, and with the equipment collected, the two head for the jeep. As they walk through the base, Leo reveals that he personally chose Harp for this mission, as he needs someone who is willing to support him, not just obey orders. The captain also warns that even though he is an android, he is still higher up in the chain of command. Therefore, if Harp wants to survive in the combat zone, he must follow all his commands. With everything clarified, Leo goes to prepare the vehicle, when suddenly, 3 soldiers pull Harp and start attacking him. Then a sergeant appears and orders his men to stop, revealing himself to be Miller, the same man who led the group of 40 soldiers during the Russian attack. He blames Harp for the loss of the 2 soldiers in the conflict, saying that they were only 19 years old and that he could have protected them without the lieutenant's intervention. However, Leo appears to break up the fight and orders everyone to leave the base and continue with the mission. Minutes later, the convoy arrives in a populated area, where they find survivors of the conflict, living amid the shooting between Ukrainians and Russians. The group moves on until Leo receives a call saying that there are bodies of American soldiers at the site. Fearing that Russian snipers are surrounding the area, Leo orders Harp to keep his weapon ready and the group continues to advance. Finally, they find a truck blocking the road, along with a group of Ukrainian resistance fighters providing supplies to the survivors. When they see the American soldiers approaching, the group points their weapons at them and orders them to back away. However, one of the fighters throws an iron pipe at one of the GUMPs, who, considering him hostile, shoots the man in the leg. Because of this, a conflict between the resistance and the American soldiers is about to begin, but Leo decides to intervene before more casualties occur. The captain puts his weapon on the ground and goes to the fighters, promising that he will not attack them. As he approaches, he asks the leader to allow him to pass, as they are carrying medication for the wounded residents. The negotiation continues until the group's leader accepts the terms, and Leo orders the soldiers to help him remove the blockade. However, just as they are about to leave, mercenaries allied with Viktor Koval appear on the buildings and start shooting at everyone on the ground. A shootout ensues, and with no field experience, Harp can do nothing but take cover behind the vehicle. Meanwhile, Leo and the other soldiers shoot at the criminals, with GUMP resisting the shots and firing missiles at the buildings. However, One of Koval's men grabs a bazooka and fires at the robot, blowing it to pieces. The shooting intensifies and Harp continues to take cover in the car until Leo calls him to get out of there as soon as possible. The captain asks Sergeant Miller to cover him, and the two head towards a building, managing to escape the crossfire. After that, Harp and Leo walk through a forest, when the android begins to talk about his condition. Thanks to advanced US technology, the captain is able to feel pain and even simulate human emotions. For this reason, he prefers to work in the field rather than in an office, as he believes he can make a bigger difference and end the conflict. However, the war is far from over, and Harp realizes this when he comes across bodies lying on the ground, victims of a Russian firing squad. The two continue their long walk until they finally find the Resistance's hideout, built in an old train station. Inside, they head to the hospital wing and deliver the medications. However, unbeknownst to them, a mysterious man invades the refugee base and takes a gun out of his bag. Positioning himself above one of the train cars, he receives a call from Viktor Koval, authorizing the elimination of the American combatants. The sniper then pulls the trigger, but one of the nurses passes in front of Captain Leo and ends up getting shot. The refugees panic and try to flee, with the sniper eliminating more of them in an attempt to finish off the two soldiers. The sniper persists and manages to get Harp in his sights, but before he pulls the trigger, Leo is quicker and hits him with a pistol shot. Immediately afterwards, the captain runs to the sniper, who has a tattoo of Krasny, one of Koval's soldiers. Leo demands answers, but when the sniper refuses to talk, he hands him over to the Ukrainian survivors to finish the job. Seeing this, Lieutenant Harp says that the enemy could still be interrogated, and they need to follow protocol and report what happened to the base. However, Leo refuses, knowing that this will only delay the mission with unnecessary bureaucracy. Even so, Harp is against the android's stance and even threatens to return to base and tell his superiors everything. However, Leo is not intimidated and warns that the lieutenant will not be able to survive alone in the combat zone. He then gets into a truck and says he will go after his informant, and with no other choice, Harp agrees to go along. During the trip, the lieutenant asks how an android can be so similar to humans. Although he does not know the details of his creation, Leo replies that his programming requires him to obey orders, but also gives him some autonomy to act freely in times of urgency. The conversation continues until the two arrive at another refuge, led by Sophia, Captain Leo's informant. She calls them to her office and reveals that Viktor Kovac is after the codes to activate the silos, but they have been stored in a safe hidden in the city. She doesn't know where the safe is, but she tells them about an illegal arms dealer named Varric, who may have this information. Sophia agrees to take them to him, but Leo will need weapons, and she offers him some of her arsenal in exchange for money for the refuge. Harp is against the idea of buying illegal weapons, but again, he is forced to follow Leo's instructions. Once they agree on the payment, Sophia takes them to the city market, and they go to talk to one of the merchants to find out where Varric is. He refuses to talk, but the captain doesn't believe him and kicks him, sending the man through the wall. On the other side, they find Varric and his men, who set out to attack Leo, but the android confronts them at the same time, counter-attacking with quick blows. After getting rid of them, Leo pins Varric down on the table and demands to know where Viktor Koval is. However, another henchman appears on the other side of the room, pulls out a machete and lunges at the group, but is stopped by Sophia, who knocks him to the ground using her coat. Soon after, another henchman gets up and attacks Leo, with the two heading towards the market. The captain quickly recovers and punches the man until he passes out, but Varric takes the chance and tries to escape. Unfortunately for him, Leo is faster and manages to capture him, demanding to know where the safe with the codes is. Varric then reveals that the codes are hidden in the Dnipro Investments building, but Kovac must already be there. Harp and Leo rush to the location, but before leaving, Sophia pulls out a pistol and shoots Varric for selling the weapon to their enemy. With the man finished off, the two soldiers take Varric's vehicle and speed off to the building. Inside the car, Harp suggests calling for reinforcements, but Leo is against the idea, as the base cannot know what they are doing. The lieutenant begins to suspect that the android is hiding something and questions the limits of his programming, as he has already gone against military protocol several times. Leo then reveals that he called Harp for the mission not only because of his ability, but because he needed someone known for disobeying orders. That way, the android can continue the mission without being hindered, because as a machine, he does not take responsibility for his actions. This means that if they find out about his misconduct during the mission, all the blame will be placed on the lieutenant. Upon learning this, Harp considers giving up, and Leo gives him that chance, but warns him that if they don't act now, Viktor will have access to the codes and the world will be at risk. Faced with this dilemma, Harp decides to go ahead, and the two approach the building to retrieve the silo codes. Before entering, Leo asks Harp to remove a tracking device from his body, as the Russians can identify his presence through it. Using a knife, the lieutenant manages to remove the device, and Leo closes the wound with a bandage, which reconstructs his artificial skin in seconds. Armed, the two break into the building, and the place appears to be empty until a Russian soldier appears. With no time to lose, Leo eliminates the man with a knife and continues on, finding hostages hidden on a bench. The captain orders Harp to protect them, but soon after, more of Kovac's mercenaries appear and start shooting at the two soldiers. Leo faces them alone, and when he manages to take down one of the shooters, he throws a grenade at another one upstairs. The exchange of fire continues, and with only one mercenary left, the captain is out of ammunition and goes in for hand-to-hand combat. Thanks to his endurance and reflexes, Leo gets the upper hand and subdues the mercenary, finishing him off with shots from his own pistol. The fight seems to be over, but shortly after, a Russian Gump appears, equipped with heavy weapons and rocket launchers. Leo then asks Harp to throw the grenade launcher and fires at the robot, but it does not cause any damage. Seeing that the Gump will eliminate everyone in the room, the captain tells Harp to contact the base and call for reinforcements while he lures the robot in another direction. The lieutenant then calls Colonel Eckhart, giving him his location and requesting immediate reinforcements. He then leads some of the hostages to safety outside the building, and minutes later, two convoys appear, bringing more Gump soldiers. Harp then orders the hostages to continue their escape, but more Russian mercenaries appear and capture them in front of the building. While Harp deals with this impasse, Leo continues to flee from the robot, until he finds it climbing a ladder. In one swift movement, the captain manages to rip a mechanism from its head and deactivate the machine. After that, he encounters more mercenaries, and after easily dealing with them, he goes after the last one, who is carrying the briefcase with the codes. Outside, Harp tries to negotiate with the mercenaries, but one of the Gumps anticipates this and shoots at the leader. Because of this mistake, the Russian snipers eliminate some of the hostages, and an intense exchange of fire begins. Harp does his best to save the survivors, and takes some of them to hide inside a diner. After that, he calls the base again and tells Colonel Eckhart that he needs more reinforcements. However, he informs him that the entire site will be destroyed and has authorized the launch of missiles via drones. Harp informs him that Leo is still inside the building and that there are civilians nearby, but the colonel says that the important thing is to eliminate Viktor Koval and that the victims are just collateral damage. Harp soon finds himself in the same situation, where he acted in the interest of the mission, without taking into account the human lives at risk. To correct his mistake, he decides to save one last hostage, and when he was about to escape with her, another Russian mercenary appears on the other side of the car. For the first time, the lieutenant is forced to engage in combat, and in one swift movement, he shoots and eliminates the enemy. Despite his guilt, Harp has no time to waste and takes the hostage to the diner seconds before the missile is launched and destroys the entire building. After the explosion, Harp gets up in a daze and finds the place destroyed, along with several bodies on the floor. Shortly after, Leo appears and takes him back to the car, bringing with him the briefcase with the silo codes. As soon as he regains his senses, Harp orders them both to return to base, but Leo says he has other plans for these codes. The lieutenant insists, but the captain does not obey the order and reveals that the tracker that was removed was actually a device to control his actions. Without it, Leo is completely free from his programming and can act however he wants. The lieutenant realizes that the android has become too dangerous, and threatens to shoot him, but the captain is faster and knocks him unconscious with a blow to the head. Sometime later, Harp wakes up lying on the ground, but soon a van appears, bringing a group of Ukrainian guerrillas. He tries to escape, but is captured and taken to the resistance base, where he reunites with Sophia. Harp tells her everything about Leo, but Sophia says that the android is acting to end the war. His goal is to find Viktor Koval, and once he discovers where the silos are, he will hand over the military force to the Ukrainian resistance to defeat their enemies. However, far away, it is revealed that Leo not only knew Koval's location, but was also working for him secretly. His goal was to collect the access codes for the criminal, as he is the only one who knows the location of the silos and nuclear warheads. As soon as Leo arrives at the base, Viktor demands the codes, but Leo says he will not hand them over until he knows where the silos are. The criminal threatens to eliminate him on the spot, but the android pulls out a gun and starts shooting at his men, while using Viktor's body as a shield. After easily defeating them all, Koval is left, who tries to resist, but the android throws a pole at him, hitting him in the chest. Back at the resistance base, Harp tries to figure out what Leo intends to do, until he finally discovers the answer. As the android had told him, it is necessary to go beyond orders to end the conflict. Now that he has free will, Leo intends to use nuclear warheads to attack the nation most interested in perpetuating wars, the United States. Although the soldiers were sent as peacemakers, the truth is that the American nation profits and gains influence through conflict between nations. Thus, Leo intends to launch a nuclear attack against the United States, thereby ending war throughout the world. Harp does not intend to let this happen and asks Sophia for help in stopping him. However, the resistance leader refuses, saying that the United States will learn, in the worst way, what collateral damage means, just like the Ukrainians. The guerrillas then ask their leader what to do with the lieutenant, but in an act of mercy, she lets him go. Harp then makes his way back to the base, and hours later, he arrives at the site, where he is confronted by Colonel Eckhart and Sergeant Miller about what is happening. The lieutenant reveals that Captain Leo intends to reactivate the silos and launch a massive attack on the United States. Because of him, his control system has been removed, and the android does not obey human orders, making him a much more dangerous enemy than he thought. The US military has little time to stop him, because by now, Leo already knows where the silos are, and is likely to launch the attack soon. The colonel reports that their location is still unknown, but Harp recalls that Leo left with Vurick's vehicle. With the criminal being targeted by the military, they had been monitoring his movements and knew the model of his vehicle. The lieutenant then asks for help from Bale, his colleague in drone monitoring, to locate the car. Minutes later, she manages to find the vehicle on the road, but it is already crossing the Russian border. The US military is not authorized to send reinforcements into the country, so Harp decides to go there alone. Armed with flammable ammunition, the lieutenant drives into Russian territory, while the base gives him Leo's location. Finally, Harp finds the silos in an old nuclear plant and breaks into the site, where he finds Russian soldiers lifeless. Suddenly, another soldier is thrown from a tower, and Harp soon realizes that Leo is nearby. The android reaches the control room and begins to activate the nuclear warheads, triggering the mechanism with the codes from the briefcase. As he finishes the job, Leo senses someone approaching, and when he sees Harp arriving at the scene, he pins him against the wall. The lieutenant tries to argue, saying that he will end the lives of millions of people, but the android says he is doing this to save even more. He continues to pressure Harp, who tries to resist and starts shooting at the android's body with his pistol. Even though he is wounded, Leo manages to knock Harp unconscious and proceeds to finish activating the warheads. Seconds later, Harp wakes up, and as soon as he gets his gun back, he points it at Leo and fires at the android. The flammable ammunition damages Leo's body, and Harp demands to know how to deactivate the warheads. However, Leo warns that it is too late and intends to destroy his creators to prevent weapons like him from continuing to be created. However, Harp does not want to risk the lives of others and says that humanity can still learn to live without war. Harp then contacts Eckhart, informing him that he has found Leo and that the warheads have been activated. Upon learning this, the colonel orders Bale to fire the drone's missiles to destroy the entire site before it is too late. After this command, Harp flees the scene, with only seconds to spare before the missile hits the nuclear power plant. Finally, the missile hits its target, causing an explosion that destroys the entire base, preventing the nuclear warheads from being launched. The mission is complete, and the world is saved from a massive nuclear attack. However, there is no sign of Harp anywhere, and the colonel tries to contact the lieutenant, but gets no response. Everyone believes that the lieutenant sacrificed his life, but seconds later, Harp answers the call, saying he managed to escape in time. The colonel and the entire team congratulate him on his courage and determination to save his country, and in return, the lieutenant is authorized to return to the United States. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.